show guest. This man is ready to hit the 3 count at any given moment. This man has wrestled for over 30 promotions, maybe 35, and I don't even know what the number's at. He is wrestling referee David Sanderson. What is up, my man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to be here. I know we've been trying to put this together for a little while, so we've been kind of playing phone tag on that one. But excited to be here. Doing great. How are you?
Good, man. It's funny. I ran into you into a store. I'm wrestling, or I'm not wrestling. I'm wearing a wrestling T-shirt, and you're like, "Hey, we have that almost like anytime you see a wrestling fan in public, and you just say, "Hey, man, I like you wrestling fan. Like, I like your shirt." And I
Yeah.
don't know what I was wearing.
Yeah, I don't remember either. You were wearing some sort of wrestling shirt, and then we struck up a conversation. And I told you I was a referee, and then it kind of just went from there. You told me about your channel, and I think this is really before things really started like blowing up for
Yeah,
you. And then since then, man, like you've been doing your thing. You got like 90,000 followers on Facebook.
yeah. It's crazy, man. And then I told
Mm,
my wife, I was like, "Man, wrestling always finds me. Like
mhm.
going out somewhere, like." It just always finds me. But man, I'm so excited. You are the very first wrestling referee on my show. So
Cool.
I'm gonna
Okay.
ask you the most standardest question, and then we're gonna get to some crazy questions. Is how did you just discover pro wrestling?
How did I? Okay, I love telling this story. So how did I discover pro wrestling? Originally I started watching in like I think it was like the fall of 2015. I was doing like my 2015. I was in my like sophomore year of high school. And I just stumbled across it on YouTube. I just started watching old videos of like Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, Hogan, all those guys. It was a lot of like Attitude Era stuff. Um, and it kind of just snowballed. I was like, at first it was kind of like interesting, and then it really started to snowball. And then I was like, how can I watch this live? So then I looked it up. I was like, okay, you could watch this on Mondays on the USA Network. I was like, cool, okay. Um, and then it really just like it went from there. I think this was like what were the feuds at the time? I think it was like Roman and the Authority were starting their thing. Seth and Cena were having that U.S. title feud. Sting was on the back end of his last run. Um, and yeah, I just like I fell in love. Like literally, my first live wrestling show. It kind of worked out weirdly. I was in Fort Myers for like my brother's soccer tournament, and then I found out WWE was in town. So I was like, "Hey, can we go?" And my parents were like, "Sure." So then it was like me, my brother, my mom. I don't think my dad went for whatever reason, but that's besides the point. Um, and my first actual like like televised wrestling show was WrestleMania in Orlando. Like it wasn't like an episode of Raw. It wasn't an episode of SmackDown. It was WrestleMania out of all things. So that's kind of wild to me. Like I went to a couple of live events before that. Um, but yeah, and then after that, it just like I kind of just stayed with it, and then my brother kind of fell off somewhere along the way, and then pandemic comes around, nothing else to do, and I was kind of like, you know what? I kind of want to see. I knew I didn't really want to wrestle. It takes a big toll on your body, but I kind of wanted to see like what else can I do in this business besides wrestle? I thought about ring announcing. I got told, maybe not. I was told by a couple people you don't really have the voice for it. Um, but then I got asked to do. I was in wrestling school for literally like a week, and I got asked to do a student show that week, and I was like, okay. Uh, so I'm in the ring, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. It's like a front row ticket to the action. But I've learned, of course, over the years, it's so much more than that, and it really just snowballed from there. And I really fell in love with it, man. I never would have imagined the things. I never would have imagined I'd be in the business, by now, and you know, doing some of the things that I've gotten to do. It's um, it's crazy, man.
How did your family react to like, hey, I'm gonna be training to become like a referee to like you're actually refereeing matches, like, what does your family think of all of it?
I definitely think some of them maybe thought it would have been a phase. I don't think a lot of them thought it was gonna stick. But like as the years went by and I started to do it more and more, I feel like they kind of accepted it as a legit thing. But they've been very supportive. My parents have been, they they live like 3 or 4 hours south of me. So they can't really come to shows a lot, but they've been to a few. Like my dad was just at a show, I think a couple months ago. I was doing like an outdoor show. It was like 30 degrees outside, and he still came out and he supported me. But yeah, my parents have always been. At first, they were a little intrigued by it, like intrigued in not like a not great way. Like what are the logistics? Does it pay a lot? And of course, the pay thing came up a lot because in indie wrestling, dude, we
You're
we
lucky enough to get a hot dog.
we we're we're pretty no, I mean we get paid, but we're pretty much almost always operating at a loss, unless you unless you really established yourself, or you've been signed somewhere, and then I hate to see anybody lose their job, but unless you've been like signed somewhere and you have that experience, or you really like establish yourself with the character, um you're not making a lot.
Yeah.
I try the best I can to try to break even. But a good amount of times I'm operating at a loss.
Something that I've seen that is really awesome that you do is that, especially starting off, is you show up. You got just showing up to shows, right? And
Yeah,
just being ready.
yeah, yeah. A lot of how I got booked on the Florida Indies at first was just me. Like, I'd shoot messages to promoters like, "Hey, here's who I am." Um, Here's like I had put like I got advice early on to like make a little resume, so I had a resume put together. Um, at first I didn't really send match links. I made like a little highlight reel of what I do. And then later on I learned like it's better to send a short match, to showcase your skills. Um, but yeah, I said that out to promoters. Some responded. 80% of promoters don't respond to that stuff. So it's like you have to do what you have to do. And it was a lot of me going out to shows like in Tampa, Fort Myers, even just like I think there was one show I got to do reality of wrestling, which is Booker T's promotion.
Yeah.
Um it was like me and four of the wrestlers, and I'm like crammed in the middle seat in the back of a car, and we had to drive 15 hours up to Houston. That's each way.
Wow.
So and I wasn't even booked. Like I was told like they know I was going up there, but I wasn't like it wasn't for sure that I was gonna get a match. But it's like I went up there, I got a match, and that's also how I got a lot of bookings in the Florida Indies. Is just like hey, we'll throw you on like the opening match for the show, and we'll see how you do, and then it goes from there. So yeah, a lot of it's showing up, helping out. Sometimes it takes me like I got to do GCW, Game Changer Wrestling. Um and that took like, 5 or 6 times to just showing up, just be willing to wear multiple hats is really the biggest takeaway of all this. Is like, whether you're a cameraman, whether you're a timekeeper, um just keep showing up, and you never know what type of opportunity it's going to present you. Um, yeah.
So take me to your first, if you can remember, first wrestling match that you refed, and did you mess up? What do you remember?
My first wrestling match that I refereed on an indie show, that was so it's a guy named David Morningstar who's not really wrestling anymore. I guess another guy named Leroy Shogun, who is still, he's still wrestling. Shogun, if you're watching this, shout out to you. Hope you're doing good, bro. Um, Yeah, I remember, I did mess up actually. Oh my god. So, we get to the spot on the match, and, um, I count 1, 2, and I see the guy's, like, hand under the rope. I was, like, kind of trained on the rules of wrestling at the time, but I wasn't, like, fully, immersed, um, as, all the rules that there are. So I was like I don't know if that's legal. And then I kind of like had an awkward pause, and then I hit three, and then David notices this. No, other David, not me. And he's like, hands under the rope, pay attention. And the crowd starts laughing, and I'm like, fuck, bro. And I get to the back, I was so pissed at myself. I was like, first match, I already messed up. And this other referee named Chuck, um, who I've known since like day one of this business. He walked up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, it's your first match. Like, nobody's gonna remember. I just go out there and do your thing and just be better. You're doing great." Um, and yeah, yeah,
You always remember your first one, right?
yeah. Always remember your first. Whether it's good or bad. That one was definitely a questionable one. But yeah, that was inside of a little. I think it was a veterans hall in Apopka. It's for this promotion called Local Pro Wrestling.
That's awesome.
So,
So you mentioned, man, there's a lot of things that you have to know about just being awareness in the ring and certain spots. And out of the wrestling rule book of just so many things that you have to be aware, is there a rule, quote unquote, in the wrestling rule book or just in wrestling in general that you would take out a rule and or maybe add a rule? What would that be?
um, use the fucking tag ropes, please. Sorry for the language. Use the tag ropes. God. Um, I see it's mainly just like a TV thing. And even then on TV, besides WWE, I don't really see it enforced a whole lot. Um, Not enforcing like officials that enforce it, but just like enforcing like, like they make sure you're holding, the tag rope. I don't outside of TV, I really don't see it enforced, especially on indie shows. But I feel like that should be more of a rule of like, hey, you should be holding on to the tag rope at all times. That's my thing. Um, Rules to take out. Um, Honestly, I wouldn't take out any rules. Maybe have a rule change. So I got to do MLW for the first time. I did television for the first time a couple of weeks ago in Atlanta, and one of the rules that was different is that outside, um, they have to the count of 20. It's kind of similar to how they have it in Japan. Um, Whereas other companies they have it to the count of 10.
Right.
I prefer 20. It does seem a little odd, but I see why they enforce it. It gives them a lot more time on the outside to, get their stuff in.
Right.
Um I prefer a count of 20. I would probably, make that kind of a universal rule for, anywhere that I rep, but that's not, my discretion. um yeah, so but in terms of removing a rule, no. I don't really have anything on that one.
So you mentioned like TV tapings, right? And I would assume in some matches you wear earpieces, right? The referee usually wears, depending if it's TV, majority of the time, in your big WWE, AEW,
Mhm.
TNA, you can see the ref wearing an earpiece. Have you put on an earpiece, and how do you feel about it? Does it feel comfortable? Like, do you just have gripes about it, or are you used to it?
So I've worn earpieces for like a handful of promotions. Like a lot more independent promotions are using it now. I started getting to the point a couple months ago where I ordered my own, you know, radios and earpieces, and now I bring them with me to shows. So that places that don't have them now can use them. Um, I've used them, a handful of times. My best experience having them was at MLW because they have like a different type of radio. It's more like a higher quality because half of the time all you hear is you can't understand anything that they're
Right.
saying. But when I did TV, it was clear as day, and I was really happy about that because sometimes they're telling you really important things that you need to relate to the talent. And if you can't understand them, it could mess up the flow of the match, or um it could mess up, a spot that, let's say, like, if a guy gives another guy a drop kick and then he goes to the outside, I'll get a cue from the back, like, hey, tell them they got 6 minutes, tell them this, that, and the other. So it's always like a double-edged sword. Um, Most of the time, I'd say probably like 75% of the time, like, it's hard to understand what they're saying. So sometimes you really have to listen and try to make out what they're saying. But at television promotions, it's a lot more clear.
So in wrestling, WWE, AEW, TNA, anything that's on TV, right? The fans notice the injury spot, and that if it's real, it's the big X, right?
Mhm.
Um, have you ever thrown up the X? Is the X still a thing, or do you have another spot that you use for like, hey, something's going on here?
The X is very much still a thing. Um, I've only had to throw. I don't. You know what? Yeah, I've only had to throw it up. As a shoot once. It's happened like 4 months into the business. I was refing a tag match in Fort Myers. Um, and one of the guys goes to do a dive through the middle rope, and his foot gets caught, and he lands head first on the apron. And I like rush out to go check on him. And he's snoring when I get there. Um, so I had to call the match, and he was out for like a year with neck and shoulder issues. It was bad. It was really bad. I did another show recently. I think it was last week. I'm not gonna name any of the talent that this happened to, but I had another guy who also got caught. His foot got caught on the ropes. Thankfully, he didn't land on the apron. He went, but he did go like pretty much like almost head first to the floor. But he was able to like turn enough in time. And I look over and he's like grabbing his neck, and I rush over to go check on it. Thankfully, he was okay. That gave me really big flashbacks. That's crazy that literally happened, I think, last week, and that was the first time that's happened since since that other incident. Um, yeah, I think I did the ID showcase at House of Champions a couple months back. We had um an incident. It was Jackson Drake against I don't remember the other guy's name. I don't want to butcher it. Um, Let me see here. I think it was it was Jackson Drake was wrestling another guy who's also ID'd, and he does like a double knee moonsault, kind of like Speedball does. And he's done the move, like, he said in the back, like, he's done the move, like, you know a lot of times. And just like the one time, I guess he had like shifted a little bit to the right, and his knee like connected with a guy's jaw. So yeah, that I didn't referee that match personally, but the referee Jeffrey Flores, shout out to him. He had to throw the X up, so that was like, that was scary. Thankfully, other guy turned out okay. Everything was good from that point. Um, but yeah, it's very much still a thing. There's not really any other signals that we use in terms
So,
of injuries.
so you're a referee, right? And in any type of line of work or sports, we have people that we look up to, right? So
Mhm.
who are some of the referees currently or all time that just inspired you, or you watch their work and you're like, wow, that's great.
So I wouldn't say there's particular referees that inspired me, quote unquote, because I wasn't like I didn't plan on being a referee when I had first gotten to the business, or when I first started watching wrestling. But like, some of the all time greats, in my opinion, Charles Robinson, Mike Chioda.
Yeah.
But someone really, like, I feel like my mentors or people I've really looked up to or have really helped guide me in this business, Jason Ayers has been Um, such a great person and just such a great mentor, who's given me some really great guidance in this business. Him, Frank Gastineau, uh, Chuck Chuck Oren. He's a referee on the independent scene. Those are, three guys that I really look up to and I really call my mentors because they really help shape the referee that I become in this business, and I can't imagine, without their advice or without their guidance, where I would be.
So being a referee, and when we think referee, we think of their uniform, right? It's black and white. It's kind of like the standard in sports, but we've seen just different type of referee uniforms, right? Different colors. You have WWE kind of going with a black and gray, but
Hmm.
back in WWF they had the blue button up. You have other promotions with their own, AEW does their own thing. Is there like you're like, wow, that's a cool uniform. Do you like just the OG black and white? What's your perspective on the referee uniforms?
So I've worn a couple different ones. So I think this is really their uniform has only changed for me like a couple times since I started. I had a promotion last year that isn't around anymore. It was called Ultimate Victory Wrestling. Um, it was a show I did in the Panhandle, and they had us do like the old school blue shirt, button up, bow tie. I thought that was a really cool look. I did this promotion called Rocky Mountain Pro a couple weeks ago, and they had purple referee shirts. This is the same as the white and black stripes, except it's purple and black instead of white and black. I thought that was pretty cool. And then MLW, they have their own like custom referee shirts. Like they have like white stripes kind of going from the shoulder down. They have the MLW logo here, and then it's all red. Besides that, so yeah, all the other the alternate referee uniforms I've had to wear, was a pretty big fan of. I don't think there's anything that I really disliked. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think here if there was anything else that I've had to wear besides that. I think yeah, that's probably about it.
What would your color of choice be? Was it just standard black and white? Or if you had the opportunity, like, hey, customize it, whatever color you want, as long as it has the stripes, it's go.
Uh, in terms of just refereeing in general, you're saying
Yeah.
refereeing in general, I prefer. Oh, that's another one. I've worn like a black polo a couple times. I've refereed for this promotion up in Georgia called Action Wrestling, which I'll be out this Friday. But they have like black polos with the Action logo on them. I really like those. I've started to prefer polos a little bit more instead of the stripes. I'd say probably like like a polo with the company's logo on it is probably more of my go-to instead of stripes.
Okay. So we've seen some wrestling promotions. They have the wrestlers like win, loss, maybe tie record, right?
Mhm.
How do you feel like if, and maybe could be the bigger promotions, do you feel like referees should be shown their stats on like how many matches they've officialed? Do you think that'd be a cool idea? Not cool idea? Kind of just give you a cool like perspective on stats.
That's a really good question. I feel like I'm kind of in between of like maybe how many years they've officiated instead
Yeah.
of matches they've officiated. But I feel like especially in wrestling, years experience can be a big difference as to how many matches you've worked. Either whether as a wrestler, referee,
Right.
vice versa. I'd probably say if I were to choose one of the two, if I have to, pick an answer, I'd probably go with the amount of matches. Because I feel like the amount of matches shows more of your experience than how many years you've been doing it. Because I've met guys who have done it for like 10 years, but they've only had like maybe like 100 matches under their belt. As compared to other wrestlers who've been doing it 5 years and they have like almost 1,000. It's crazy. Um, But yeah, so I'd probably go with matches instead of years experience.
Nice, nice. So in wrestling, we obviously have the baby face, which is, the good guy, and
Mhm.
then we have the heel, which is not the good guy.
Right.
And
Yeah.
at certain times in wrestling and wrestling business, you have your good referees and your shadier referees.
Mhm.
What do you tend to like when you're doing matches? Do you like, hey, we need you to be the shady referee? Have you gotten that opportunity, or do you just like calling it straight down the line? You're gonna be even as possible, or maybe sometimes, you know what? I'm gonna throw some shade.
No, I've seen some promotions where, they'll have like referees that are like a heel ref or they're aligned with a specific like group, um, or like a specific faction. But in my personal experience, I haven't had any, I haven't, sorry, dog. Dog was barking. I haven't really had any experience with, being a heel referee. I don't necessarily have a lot of interest in being a heel referee. Like if that's what some promotions want to do, that's fine. But in my opinion, people come to see the wrestlers. They don't come to see the referees. If they want to do it like for a storyline, one storyline every once in a blue moon, that's cool, but not really my cup of tea.
So in wrestling, we have the standard go home, which
Mhm.
means, hey, uh, we got to finish the match. We got to wrap
Wrap
it
it
up.
up. Yeah.
Is it go home? Do you have another word that you like using, or what's the standard home for? Hey guys, wrap it up. Or do you have a favorite word?
Yeah, it's pretty much, the most common word used is go home. Or, like, let's start wrapping, start wrapping it up. Let's start taking it home. We got like 60 seconds left, stuff like that. There isn't really many other terms, so I'd probably say either, go home or start wrapping it up. That's pretty standard.
So you've wrestled in so many different promotions, in so many probably different cities and states. So I've got to ask you the question: where's a state or country that you would love to wrestle for or at?
Referee for, yeah. A re- um a state or a country. Ooh, that's a good one. The first thing that comes to mind is Japan. So I've been to Japan what twice. I haven't had the privilege or the opportunity to work out there yet. That's one of my goals in my career. Even if I just get to do one match, in Japan. Japan is definitely a goal of mine. I've done uh outside of the States, I've done two other countries that I've already refereed in, that being the United Kingdom, which I'm going back to in August. So I'm excited about that. I haven't announced that yet. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. So going back there. In terms of states, I haven't really touched the West Coast a lot. Like the furthest west I've like refereed in is really Colorado. I haven't done like California. I haven't done Seattle. I love to do like a West Coast Pro or like a Defy in Seattle. That's one of their big promotions out there. Um, yeah, so I'd really love to do some more stuff on the West Coast. I haven't really touched a lot of Canada either, so that'd probably be another country. So really just like, Canada, Japan, and then probably, California or Seattle. That would probably be those are some of the first things that come to mind.
So I saw you had I think, which is one of the coolest opportunities to referee a WWE Evolve match. Tell
Mhm.
me about that and how it occurred and what were you feeling?
So yeah, that is probably the match I'm most proud of in my that's one of the matches I'm most proud of in my career. Not a lot of guys get to say, they've refereed a match, with two guys that are currently signed, let alone, a championship match from WWE itself. And it's rare that that kind of stuff gets brought to the indies, if it's not the ID titles
Yeah.
in the first place. So, the way it kind of all came together is like, we were assigning matches and, I was asked if I'd like to do, you know, the Evolve title match. I was like, yes, yes, of course. The other referee that was assigning matches, Jeff, that night, he had laid out the land of the matches that we were gonna do, and he had put me in the Evolve title match, and yeah, that's kind of how it all worked out. It wasn't anything like, I'd say, super complex, but I was very, very grateful to receive an opportunity like that. Especially so, I'd say even I've only been doing this about 5 years. That's still considered new in wrestling. But very grateful to have been able to do something like that in my career. It boggles my mind to this day.
That's like incredible. So in wrestling matches, you're the referee, obviously. What are like some pet peeves? I know you're zoned into the match and obviously doing your job. What are some of maybe your pet peeves that you've seen fans do or say that like, wow, you really said that? Or like any pet peeves?
Any pet peeves that the fans have said? That's an
Yeah.
interesting one. Um, I guess just the that was three ref. I'm like, yeah, I don't. I guess that's really the only one. I wouldn't say there's really a lot of pet peeves in terms of fans, but I'm like, that was three ref. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Yeah.
You get the ref, you suck.
No, I've gotten that plenty of times before. I don't care. That's no, not really any pet peeves, especially from the fans, except for the ref. That was three. That's really it.
So, what's the craziest match that you've refed or that you can remember?
So, the craziest like in ring match. So are we just talking about like opportunity wise, or are we just talking about match wise here?
Just match opportunity, whatever stands out to you that like, wow, that was crazy.
So of course, uh Evolve title was one of them. Um in terms of like individual matches, I got to referee this match between Sir Pezzico from AEW and another guy named Jay Rios. Back in 2022, this is an indie show in Orlando, or was it 23? I can't remember. But yeah, they were just hitting like spot after spot. I just like it's hard to retell the story of the match. Like it was kind of like one of those things you had to be there in the moment. But that was one of my favorites.
So, in wrestling, you had mentioned before how you got to attend a WrestleMania, which we know, like WrestleMania is the Super Bowl really looked upon in the wrestling business.
Mhm.
How did that feel going to your first WrestleMania?
Going to my first WrestleMania. So this is back in like 2017. Way before I got in a couple years before I got in the business. But it was kind of cool because like you watch this stuff on TV and then you get to see it live. Um, that experience, it was how do I describe it? It was, I hate to sound like cheesy, but it was really, it was unlike a lot of other wrestling shows. Like it was the first televised wrestling show that I ever went to. Um, but it was just like um the card was loaded, and I love how they used to really like, especially go all out for the stages for
Yeah,
WrestleMania. I really like that year's, like that was Orlando, WrestleMania 33. It was the first
it
one.
had like almost like a universal globe, and they had
Yeah,
that long entrance.
it was a really, really unique stage. I remember Hardy Boys came back that night. What else? Yeah, it was like Brock versus Goldberg. I think that was Taker's, like one of Taker's last, like,
That
actually,
iconic
like
entrance walk, man. Oh,
that was one of Taker's like last, like really full length matches, because I think he had a match with Cena like at Mania the year after, and then after that he didn't really have like, he had that Boneyard match with Styles,
yeah.
but that, I feel like that was like the last like full length match he had at a Mania.
So, from going to WrestleMania, right? And now, um, how is the experience different from a WWE event to a local indie event? What's the biggest difference, um, just in your eyes on the experience alone? How maybe in WWE, you're kind of paying for a premium now that we've seen for expensive tickets versus an indie show. You're paying basically 20, 30 bucks and you're right there next to the ring versus WWE
Mhm.
show. You're probably sitting way in the back unless you're gonna spend that type of money.
Um, the experience is definitely different in a lot of ways. First you get a chance to at least most of the independent shows that I've been to, you get a chance meet the wrestlers because a lot of the times either before the show or during the intermission if they have one or after the show, you get a chance to really interact with them, and it gives the fans kind of that that more personable experience. It really gets a chance to know to get to let them get to know the wrestlers as people instead of just like their characters. And that's where I feel like, I've seen indie shows where like fans will drive hours or like they'll drive like across like 2 or 3 states just to come see a guy wrestle. And it's really cool just to see them get to make that type of connection. So it's definitely more personable in you know, that sense. Indie shows normally they're at smaller venues, so there's never a bad seat in the house. Um, 20 or 30 bucks a person. Sometimes I see indie shows where it's like 10 or 15 bucks a person. It's very affordable and you can bring like friends or family, and that's how I've introduced a lot of my friends or family to wrestling is just, they've either come to see me referee and then they'll watch some of the other matches and they're like, holy hell, that was insane. Um, but I feel like indie wrestling, especially for the non-average wrestling fan, is a great introduction
Yeah.
um, to see how things are and kind of like the build up to guys getting signed, and you really get to see guys like Eli Knight, for example. He made his start on the Indies. Like I met Eli through like we used to work together in retail, and it's crazy to see guys kind of make that jump, whether it's from the indies straight to a contract, or sometimes they'll get a couple dark matches and then get signed. um there's so many different aspects to it, and I just without independent wrestling I feel like wrestling wouldn't have a lot of the guys that they do today without it. So
All right. So, Mike, I asked my kids previously, hey, what's a question I can, ask a referee,
mhm.
in the wrestling business? And of course, it's a standard question. And my kids want to know, who's your favorite wrestler?
Who's my favorite wrestler? Oh man. um Yeah, put me on the spot with this one. So,
Or wrestlers? You can pick more than one.
I'd say like my current favorites. I'll be honest. Um, my favorite wrestlers currently probably Lashley, Ricochet. Really big fans of their work. Um, yeah, those are two of my current favorites. So,
Okay. So, to put you on the spot,
mhm.
I want you, this is an indie spotlight, to shout out one wrestler, as many wrestlers as you want, that people should look up and go check out their work. Who is
Mhm.
it?
But yeah, I got a couple of people in mind. So, you know, it, these guys, in my opinion, are some of the best in the business now and are definitely the future. Reese Maddox, is one. Big Boy Patty, Kid Kuda, Destin, um, Casey Rocker. I'm trying to go down uh, a list here because I'm like, what's funny? This happened in the last interview. They asked me, and then I got off the air, and I'm like, oh, I forgot all these people. um, Ray Fury. definitely, one to watch out for. Um, Vladimir Koloff is another one who I just got introduced to recently. We worked a show together. Uh, he has like kind of that classic like foreign heel type of feel that I feel like I really haven't seen in a long time, especially on the independents. Like we've seen that a lot on TV, but it's like um something that I feel like has been kind of missing in a sense. So big fan of his work. Max Danziger is another one. He's a drummer in the band called Set It Off. But he transitioned into wrestling. He's not doing both, but he's really good at what he does. You should definitely watch out for him. Um, Mo Malik is another one. Just man, just trying to run down all
Yeah,
these
that's
guys.
what hit
Oh,
you
there's
up.
another one. It's funny. His name just popped up on my phone. It just reminded me. Matthew Ennis. Uh, Definitely watch out for him. Um, ooh, I think that'll in terms of wrestlers, that's who I have in mind as of right now. And if other names pop up, as we continue, then I'll make sure to drop them.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot one more time.
Hmm.
What would be your dream match to referee all time?
Dream match, man. Yeah, putting me on the spot on that one. Um, Dream
They
match.
don't have to be current. They can. It's wild card. Whoever.
Mm.
Two guys or girls.
So we'll go with dream match because that's I gotta think here. Mm. That's tough, man. Dream match. I'd probably say, hmm, man, you really got me with this one. I got,
If I
I
could be a
really.
referee, I'd want to do Stone Cold and The Rock.
Hmm. I'd probably say maybe like a Triple H and Undertaker. Run it back from WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Triple H, he's got a pacemaker and he can't wrestle ever again. So that's probably what would make it a dream match. And yeah, I'd probably say Triple H and the Undertaker. There's a dream match for you right there.
If you could go back to the past,
Mhm.
maybe ride the DeLorean,
Mhm.
what era of wrestling would you like to call a match for? Could be any promotion, any certain time,
Mhm.
90s, early 2000s.
That's a great question. I love that. Like if I could go back in time and referee like a match from any era of for like any are we talking any era from like any major company?
Yeah, yeah,
Man. Um I'd probably go, Attitude Era
yeah,
in WWE. Um I'd really love either that or when the brand split had first came back in like 2016. I definitely would love to have like refereed a match on like SmackDown Live or something like that.
yeah.
Because that was basically that was even though I was already in high school, that was like my childhood. You
Uh,
know, guys like Styles, Shane McMahon. Like we saw a lot of like we saw like it was pretty much like a new era. It really was. So yeah, I'd probably say like something on like SmackDown Live. Um, in like 2016, 2017. Um, that would probably be an era I'd want to go back to. I know it doesn't seem that long ago, but that was like, guys, that was like 10 years ago.
yeah,
It's not as recent as we thought it was.
right.
Um, yeah.
So, I've seen, I don't know what they call this match, but it was pretty much, it was the referee calling what they called an invisible wrestling match. I don't know if
Yes.
you've seen it. So
I
I gotta
I've seen
ask you the question. Would you ever consider doing an invisible match?
Um, well, you know what's funny? So I'm gonna be a part of a pretty big show that's coming up here soon, next month during WrestleMania weekend, called Joey's Janelle's Spring Break. I know not everybody up that's might be watching this keeps up with the indie scene. But the Sandman is retiring, and he's wrestling the Invisible Man. I don't know what matches I have on that show, but there's a possibility. That'd be cool if I did, like a match with the Invisible Man. Um, there's a so that where this kind of originated from. So GCW did a match with Invisible Stan against the Invisible Man. I think it was a show. I think it was like 9 or 10 years ago.
Right.
Bryce Runsberg from AEW, he was the referee. Um, but he just did such a great job at storytelling in that match, and that would be kind of an interesting opportunity for me to do a match like that because it's like you want no pun intended, referees kind of want to stay invisible. Want to
Yeah.
stay hidden until it's time for you to be seen. But I feel like that was one of the rare examples in wrestling where the referee really told the story, because of Bryce's selling, and just having, because he also has to remember all those spots too, of selling the moves and making it look believable. So yeah, I definitely like that would be cool to do a match like that. That would.
So in sports and wrestling, in any genre of sports, whether you're the wrestler, basketball player, football player,
Mhm.
people have pregame stuff that they do before their event. Uh, as your referee, is there anything that you do to get yourself prepared for your next match? Any pregame snacks, rituals that you do?
Um, One thing that I do, I wouldn't say I'm one to be super religious, but I do pray before I go out to the ring. That's usually the only time that I pray. But I pray before I go out to the ring. Um, I definitely make sure. I've got like I already have issues in my right shoulder from the years of counting. Um, definitely stretch out the right shoulder. Like I always have a resistance band with me. So I'd say probably like 20 or 30 minutes before I go out there, I'll make sure to stretch it out, make sure it's warmed up. Um, in terms of like snacks or anything like that, I definitely like on show days, I try not to eat like, I'd say like 4 to 5 hours is probably my cutoff. 4 to 5 hours before bell time because I don't want to look super bloated in my referee shirt. Because there is times where I have eaten like like 2 hours before bell time, and then I go out there looking like Santa Claus, dude. um, so yeah, definitely try not to eat too much on show days unless it's like in the morning or early afternoon. But if there's like a morning show, usually I'm not eating until after my first match, or unless it's very light.
So we know that in the wrestling match that the referee is, it's they're supposed to call the match,
Mhm.
kind of be seen but not seen, right?
Right.
Um, do you like in a wrestling match? Do you like doing the fast count, slow count? Where do you gauge of doing too much or too little?
Um, so I kind of learned this over the years. Is like I used to jump a lot. Like I see this a lot in indie wrestling. Like guys will take a bump, and then the referee like launches himself to the moon. Like there's like he's bouncing on a trampoline. I've learned over the years that it's like it's doing too much. It takes away. Um, and that's not to crap on any of the referees that do it. Everybody has their own style of refing. Um, Me personally, I try not to oversell moves. Like if I see something, like I might make a face or something.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of guys in the indies that are like, oh man, oh my god. Um, Unless it's something like super brutal anything like that that requires that type of sell, I try to keep the selling to a minimum. You know, I'd say like I'll make a facial expression, but that's really where I try to keep it because once again we don't want to take away from the wrestlers that the fans paid to see. Um,
How do you stay so passionate? Being a referee, how do you stay so motivated? You know, the highs and lows of life. How do you stay motivated, man?
I really like that question because I've definitely have experienced burnout a couple times. Um, like I said, I've only been doing this 5 years, but I've experienced burnout a couple times. Especially doing shows every weekend. It can take a toll. I think there was one point I say probably in like 2023. It's like I had done shows like every weekend for like a couple months in a row, and it, that, and then sometimes it's outside factors. Sometimes it's not even wrestling itself. It's just like life, you know, fi- financial stress or just like stress from like school or work. Um, it's definitely very important to pace yourself, and I should probably take my own advice on this. Because I feel like I've done it at least one show every weekend for like the last couple months. Um, it's definitely very important to pace yourself. Um, it's okay to take breaks. If an opportunity presents itself, that's a different story. But um, it's okay to take breaks. Um, your health is important. Um, I've seen guys, straight up quit the business because they've gotten to the point to where they're so burnt out that they just like fall out of love. Um, there are times where I'll take like, usually not more than like a month off or like 3 weeks to a month, if I'm really feeling it. Um, but I want to emphasize here, breaks are important. Take care of yourself, listen to your body, and wrestling is always going to be here. If you get an opportunity, you need to jump back in for a second and then go, back on the back burner for a couple weeks. Cool, but like just please, if I can emphasize one thing, just listen to your body. Listen to what's going on up here too.
Yeah.
It matters. It matters a lot.
What do you say to someone who maybe they want to become a wrestler, maybe they want to become a referee or a ring announcer, just be part of the wrestling business in some capacity? But maybe they're scared to jump into it. What advice would you give someone maybe watching the show right now?
For somebody that wants to start, it's not an easy road to take. I'm not going to sugarcoat this here. You know what's funny? I had this conversation with somebody over the weekend. It's definitely not the easiest path to take. And it's not an easy career. A lot of guys join thinking it's going to be a cakewalk, and then they take you know bumps in one wrestling class, and then they realize it's not for them, or they think it's not for them, and then they quit. But know that there's going to be hardships. This business is cutthroat. There will be people who try to step on you to get to the next level. Um, but if you have a passion, listen to it, tap into it, follow it. I knew from the first time that I refereed that I had a passion for this. Um, there will be days, you're gonna hit that wall, and you might hit that wall on day one, and that's okay. But it's really important to keep going and just see it through. And I know this is gonna sound kind of vague a little bit. It's really important. Just it's in my opinion, it's more important to say at least you tried instead of thinking, what could have been. Um, just try it. Even if it's for like, don't just try it for one class. Give it a couple months. And if it's not working, okay. But give it a couple months, really see it through because once you're past, especially that initial wall, it gets so much better.
So I'm gonna throw the spotlight on you,
Mhm.
and I want to ask you for any wrestling fan out there, any promotion, what makes you stand out? What's different about you being like a referee? What makes you stand out? Like, wow, I like the way he works.
Mm. Um, well, I'll be honest, I don't like to talk about myself a lot in terms of like, especially like the referee aspect, because I'm not here to like toot my own horn or stroke my own ego, but so in this sense, I'll talk in general about all referees. In my opinion, our job is very important because one, the safety of the wrestlers comes first. If there's like we had like I had that scare last week. And I had like two scares in a show the week before that. That another referee had those other two matches. To where guys took a move that looks pretty ugly. Um, careers can end in a second, but if we can help prevent that, that's the greatest thing in the world. It's sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Uh, it's important. Our jobs are very important because we're also the steers of the ship in a sense. We're responsible for making sure the match goes, to plan. We're making sure we're responsible for making sure the match stays, on pace, that we're on time, and that our match doesn't bleed into other people's segments, and then other matches get cut. That we don't want that to happen either. I'd say safety, timeliness, and just professionalism. Three really big things in a referee, and just like I feel like intensity and your presence to be the authority in the ring really matters too. Um, because if you don't take yourself seriously, nobody else will. That's something I really learned, especially over the last couple of years. It's not just about wearing the stripes; it's about um, enforcing the rules. And because if there is no rules, there's no bad guys to boo. There's no good guys to cheer for. Um, we play a very vital role because we're also like I said, we're kind of the captains of the ship in that sense. So I mean, I've seen shows where guys will literally get picked from the crowd. I haven't seen this firsthand, but I've been told like there's shows where people will literally they'll have fans referee the matches because the promoter doesn't want to pay a referee. If you want to make your promotion better, pay quality referee to referee your matches. Even if you got to shell out an extra 20 or $30. It's hard to come by the quality referees, but they're so worth the investment, and they will good great referees make a good match great. Bad referees can make a great match look horrible.
Right.
So that those are my biggest takeaways in terms of what makes referees important. I know that kind of I know that kind of wasn't I know that wasn't the initial question, but
No, no, that was great.
yeah, I just like it's it's bigger than myself, and
Yeah.
this sport is bigger than ourselves, and just like somebody that something another referee told me recently, it's like you know this referee is like in the sense like they pick up your suitcase, but then it's also on you to pick up somebody else's suitcase and like help them. You know, this referee's helping you. Now it's your turn to help the other referee, or even wrestlers, anybody in this business.
Yeah.
Um, just pay it forward.
There you go. So tell me about your upcoming shows, events. Where are you gonna be at, man?
Man, I got some really fun stuff coming up. So this weekend I will be at Action Wrestling. I have action this Friday night, Lion Creek, Bus Brewing Barn, in Fayetteville, Georgia. If anybody here is from the Atlanta area, please feel free to come check it out. I'll be at One Fall Wrestling on Saturday. That's in Jefferson. And then on Sunday, I will be at this convention. I don't remember the name of it, but I'll be back with action again for a couple of shows that we'll be doing throughout the day there. And then my next round of shows after that, I don't have anything uh, concrete wise. I don't have anything until WrestleMania weekend. Friday, I'll be at, Action is running, and coincidentally, Action's running in Las Vegas. That'll be at 11 a.m. That'll be at Bazaar Bar. That'll be at the New Initiative. So come check that out if you can. I'll be at Joey Janela's Spring Break on Friday night. Then on Saturday, I just got booked on this show called Mall Mania. That'll be at Neon Neon Tro- Neonpolis. I think that's what it's called. I can't pronounce the name of the venue for the life of me. Um, but there's actually a lot of talent for the 40th indie scene that's going to be on that show too. Uh, Reese and Kid Kuda, who I talked about earlier, they'll be on that show. Other guys like Jake Logan, Matty Max, they're going to be on that show too. So a lot of Florida on that show. Please come check it out if you can. Um, and then after that, I have a show in Alabama called New South. I'll be doing that on May 2nd in Gadsden. And then May 16th, I'll be doing Pro Wrestling Magic um, in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. So, yeah, if you guys are in the area for any of the shows and you want to come see yours truly and watch some great wrestling, please come do so. Besides that, I don't have any other shows planned until the summer for now.
You're kind of busy, hey.
Yeah, trying to stay busy, man. I had a lot of shows in the month of March. But it's crazy that that's already kind of blown by and we're getting to the end of it. But you know, I'm having some of the most fun I have in my career, but I'm also like reffing more shows than I ever have in my career, and just really just trying to get out there, man. So
You said it, man. That's the most important thing is you having fun.
mhm.
So where can people reach you out and maybe book you on your social media?
So social media, that's gonna be email wise, it's gonna be refdavidsanderson@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at refdavidsanderson. Um, Facebook, I'm David Sanderson on there too. Just look for a guy in a referee shirt. You'll see me.
Yeah, I'll put your
um,
links down below.
yeah, I don't think it gives me the option to. Does it give me the option to comment here? No.
No, no, I'll do it. And yeah, I'll put your links in there. And man, like, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the interview, man. This is like, I definitely want to bring you back sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
And man, like I said, guys, I think you can attest to this. It's I'm grateful for what you do because I love wrestling. My family loves wrestling, and you contribute to just I think, an awesome sport, and that you make a difference. Whether it's you touch one person, hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people, you truly make a difference, and I just thank you for that. And thank you for this awesome
Appreciate that,
interview,
man.
man.
Thank you. Um, yeah, definitely hope to do this again soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, you heard it here first. Referee, I almost said wrestler. Rep David Sanderson. Check him out, man. He's an awesome guy, and he's gonna hit you with that 3 count. He's gonna get you that dub. Hopefully, call it right down the middle. And yeah, man, thank you so much for being on the Captain Heel Show, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.